So here at Nudge, we have always believed in transparency, and we have met a lot of fascinating startups over the last nearly 5 years now, actually. Crikey, we've been going 5 years. Anyway, outside of that, we've met a lot of fascinating startups. One of them is a company called Compete. They were born out of Israel, and they are an online platform all around salary and data around the way people are being employed, which is of course what we do. Awesome team, awesome stats, awesome product all round. But we thought they have so much real-time data. You know, we're literally getting this data day after day. It's all completely right now. It's not like those reports you see that, you know, oh, we did this report and it took us 8 months and now we published the results and that was really 8 months ago and it's really not relevant. This is what's happening now. So we thought, how cool, rather than producing salary guides or, you know, employee guides or HR benefit guides that are out of date because things are moving so quickly, we're going to do a little live recording like this. I've got my data here. So Compete going to send over the data every quarter, and we're going to do a little video where we tell you exactly what's happening and the trends. And I think it's going to be super interesting, not just for me, because it means I'll be able to answer all your questions when you ring and ask me, but also you guys can watch this and know what's happening real time. And I think that really is the key thing. So welcome to the first ever report. Nudge and Compete partnered up. We're going to be bringing in this data every quarter. Let's get into it. So let's kick the report off with vacation days. Vacation days, annual leave, that kind of stuff. Really interesting topic. And what's probably more interesting is the actual data that's come through. So just having a look through this, we'll start by talking about unlimited leave. Now, unlimited leave came about, gosh, I don't know, maybe 7-8 years ago, and it was like, oh, the most amazing thing ever. I think the big tech companies started. I can't remember which one it was, but it was this: you can take as much leave as you want, as long as you're getting your job done. You know, we trust you. We're going to give you the ability to manage your own time. We're going to give you your own responsibility. All this kind of sort of new age of thinking. And so unlimited leave became a thing, and it meant people could also go and work from other countries, and that working nomad, all that kind of stuff. What amazes me is that it sort of came and then it sort of went again. And I actually did it in one of my previous companies, not Nudge, the one prior to that. And what we found was that as soon as we gave unlimited leave, and there wasn't just sort of a, oh, you've got to have your 20 days, you've got to take your 20 days, you know, we're getting to the end of the year, you haven't taken your holiday, you know, sort of pushing people so it doesn't build up, is that people started taking less time off. They were taking less than their 4 weeks, which is super weird. But the interesting stat on here is 52% of companies are offering unlimited leave, which blows me away. We don't see it in what we do in the recruitment side. It's actually not something that comes up. It's not something that's used as a negotiating tool or a benefit. So I'm really surprised that 52% of companies are offering unlimited leave. That's quite extraordinary. Then pretty much, you know, 40% 20 days, which is your standard, and then there's a variety of other ones, you know, 22, 23, 25, you know, sort of 1%ers. But yeah, 52% unlimited, and then 40% on the standard 4 weeks. So more offering unlimited leave than not. That does surprise me. All right, vacation days added each year. This is something that has really become very popular, and we do see a lot in negotiating tools. So every year extra you work for a company, you get an extra annual day's leave, and that's obviously to promote longevity, to get people to stay longer. So 54% don't offer that, which is probably what I would have expected, and then 45% offer more than 2 days, which is, again, you know, that's 50-50 split pretty much. It's interesting that people are doing that, and I think annual leave has become such a interesting topic with working from home days and people being a lot more responsible for their own time. So some of these I think you'll find surprising. Floating and flexible holidays. I had to look this up, unless you know what this one was. Hadn't heard of it before. So this is the ability, and this is designed to be very inclusive for all kinds of religions and races and a variety of different reasons actually. But the idea is that you can use what would be a typically mandated day off. So for example, Christmas Day or Good Friday, or perhaps even a public holiday. If you don't celebrate that in your life, whether that be for religious reasons or some other reason, doesn't really matter, you can use that day on a different day. So for example, if you are a religion that doesn't celebrate Easter, you can keep the Friday and the Monday that everyone else is hanging off. You can work on those days, and you can use those days potentially for another religious thing that you do celebrate, or just something else. Now, I've not heard about this, which is surprising considering how long I've been around. 66% of companies are offering this. That is astounding. I think that is amazing. 66% do not offer any kind of inclusive kind of ability. And then the others are relatively small. So 12% of companies do offer 1 to 2 days. And then the others sort of 3, 4, 5, 6, 4%, 4%, 4%. The greatest being more than 11. But 66% of companies do not offer the ability for you to not have a day off, even if you don't celebrate it. And that's an interesting stat. Public holidays, which employees get paid days off? I mean, there's a variety of them here. I think the most interesting ones here, just coming off that flexible thing. Easter Monday, 76%. New Year's Day, 60%. Public holidays, June public holiday, 46%. Boxing Day, 86%. Anzac Day, 88%. Australia Day, 88%. So these are interesting because a lot of people don't celebrate these, but they are forced to have them off. So yeah, I mean, I think that whole flexible thing, it's something that probably I think will gain a bit more momentum in the coming years. Parental leave. Now everyone knows this one's really gone up through the roof. So from a primary caregiver point of view, whether that be the mother or the father, it's not specifically maternity leave to have the baby. This is parental, so this is after the baby's born. So it could be that the mother is going straight back to work and the father's looking after the baby. That's happening more and more. So who offers that? And how much do they offer? Well, in terms of zero parental leave, 26%. Now I think that might seem high and that might seem unfair. I think a lot of those are small companies. Small companies just do not have the ability to offer that. It's just too expensive for them, so don't judge them on that. But the interesting stat is that the largest percentage is either 11 to 15 or 16 to 19 weeks. Weeks, not days. So 1 to 5 weeks, 4%. That's what I would have thought would have been the greatest amount, which is actually quite small. 6 to 10 weeks, so you're sort of coming into 3 months there, 18%. 11 to 15, 22%, and 16 to 19, 20%. So 16 to 19 weeks, that's a long time. I think that's paid parental leave. I think that's quite extraordinary. And then if you come to the secondary caregiver, so obviously this would be the other parent who is actually the one mainly working. 1 to 5 weeks, 40% of companies. It's really, really high. You wouldn't have seen that 5 years ago. Again, I think quite interesting in terms of that. 10%, 6 to 10, and 12%, 11 to 15. I think that this has been a huge growth area for everybody, and I think it's a good thing. I mean, I've been through this. There was no paid parental leave when I went through it, but I think I really do think it's a good thing. And that sort of wraps up the vacation days. Okay, let's move on to health and wellness. I feel like a newsreader. I suppose that's kind of what this is. All right, employee assistance programs, health and wellness, interesting topics. Again, changed a lot since COVID. So companies offer private healthcare plan, 10%, like nothing. It's still, I think, not seen as a benefit that really matters here in Australia, which I find super weird because it's getting more and more expensive, not to the levels it is in the US, obviously, where it's a necessity, but I do think it's something that we should be looking at because I know how much I pay for our family healthcare, and I can tell you it's extremely high. And alongside that, dental comes alongside that. Dental's slightly lower, 8, that do offer it. So 90% don't offer and 92% don't offer dental. No great surprise there. But then on the other side of it, gym and health access, 42% do offer that. So you're not got no healthcare, but they'll give you access to the gym. Interesting. So yeah, 42%. That's quite extraordinary, I think. And then another 58% on top of that are offering some sort of discounted access, which means that pretty much everyone is offering something around the gym. Not healthcare, but something around the gym. Yeah, not sure I understand that one. Wellbeing programs, EAP, employee assistance programs. Done a lot of reading about this recently. So these are programs, a lot of this grew during COVID. These are designed to stop personal issues affecting work performance. So for example, if you, and COVID-19 drove a lot of this around mental health issues, or it could be anything around an employee's personal life, but the idea is that they get access to counselling or discounted counselling or some sort of talking, a whole bunch of different things. And the idea is, like, if we can catch these things and help our employees through them before it affects their work, then that's going to be better for everyone. In reality, they get very low utilization, and I think the reason for that is probably there's a bit of a stigma, but 62% of companies now offer that, which again is a huge growth that we haven't seen before. So I still think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around them, but since they're relatively new, I think that's fair. And the cost of those programs is probably what surprised me. I would have thought these programs were expensive, but it's the bulk of them cost between $1 and $200 a year, which is nothing. So if you're spending $200 a year on your employees' well-being, it's really not a lot of money. That's 40% of companies are spending that. 16% are spending between $200 and $400, which again seems cheap. And then there's a small sort of lull between that, and then another 20% are spending over $1,000. So they're really doubling down on that. But that's a lot of money. If you're not seeing the needle move when it comes to the performance, then you probably got to question and measure those things. And alongside that is mental health support. So that's very specific. Employee or EAPs, employee assistance programs, cover a lot of variation, but mental health, 64% now companies are offering support around that. And again, that has grown massively since COVID. And in terms of mental health days, you've all seen movies where people are taking mental health days. 30% of companies are offering that and 70% aren't. I think the reason for that is probably a lot of, in terms of conversations, I've had a lot of people consider sick days as mental health days. You don't need to necessarily split them apart, but you know, that's just what the stats say. Reimbursement. Interesting. Very, very slim report for reimbursement. Not a lot of content here. So reimbursement, we're talking about companies reimbursing expenses here. Now, the thing I find really interesting about this is if you go back 10 years, this was a huge section because everything was reimbursed. But the world has changed. We all bring our own devices, have our own mobile phones, have our own cars. Taxes killed a lot of these things. So it's an interesting topic. So annual coverage of training and education reimbursement. Probably a bit of a sad stat here. 32% of companies, zero, nothing. So 32% of companies will not reimburse you for any training that you decide to take on yourself. So I guess that means they're either doing it themselves or they just don't believe in it. I think that's a worrying stat considering how quickly our world is changing right now. 14% between 500 and 1,000, which I think is quite good, but then between 1 and 2,000, which I think is probably the right amount to be fair, is 35% of companies, which is good. I mean, it's a good sign. But the fact that 32% don't offer anything, I think, is awful. And then right at the top of the scale is a whole variety of other stats in here. 6% of companies are giving you more than $7,500 in reimbursement, which is excellent. I mean, I think we're talking about degrees here, MBAs, things like that. But that's a big chunk of money. Be interesting to see the stats on how that affects people staying in the business, their longevity, how long they work there, and actually it affects their ability to perform because it's a significant amount of money, big investment. Monthly phone allowances paid to employees. Now, I don't know anyone that still does this, but it's interesting because plans are also fixed these days, that they're not particularly expensive, and you know, the days of worrying about how many phone calls you make, it doesn't really matter now. You pay the same amount. I actually thought about this the other day. I've got 2 teenagers, and my daughter's on the phone like constantly, and I remember my parents were always on to me about being on the phone because it costs so much, but actually it doesn't cost them anything at all. I am rambling again. Okay, monthly phone allowance paid to employees. 64% do not offer anything. That's probably where I would imagine it for that long rambling reason that I just gave. 12% between $1 and $50, and then 16% between 50 and 100, which is, you know, most plans are probably under 100. There's a small amount offering 200 plus. Maybe that's a lot of international calls, but yeah, pretty much what I would have thought. Okay, companies that offer internal coaches. Sorry, this is something that we did last year before. Had a great impact. So if you're not doing it, you should be. Only 38% of companies are offering it. It is very expensive and you wouldn't want to do it for everyone, but it's interesting. I still think that's a healthy amount of companies offering that when you consider how expensive it is. And then offering travel perks, doesn't really go into what those are, but 22% and 80% not offering it. Again, I think the fringe benefits tax and things like that just really wipe these out. And that's pretty much it when it comes to reimbursements. As I said, super short. Okay, we're going to finish off with the big one. The one that we talk about all the time, the one that everyone talks about all the time, the one that everyone asks me about, whether it's work or I'm at dinner with someone or everybody. Working from home. So, big shift happening at the moment. I'm going to be really interested to see how this data changes over time. Obviously, this is where it is right now, but I feel the wave of change coming, just like we did. So, working from home. Days allowed to be working from home. So 0, there actually is a small percentage of those, and to be fair, we're seeing a few more of those. 1, none. No company offers 1 day from home. Isn't that interesting? That was probably the most common thing prior to COVID, you would have one working home. That was nearly every company I knew offered that. Now, not one. I find that utterly extraordinary. 26% of companies are offering 2, but this really surprised me. 40% are offering 5. I don't know. I really don't see that now. I think that was true. I think, and that's obviously what the data says, so it is true. But I think we're going to see that sway back. 3 days is 20% and 4 days is 10%. So just think about that. So 40% of companies, so nearly half, are offering 5 days, so pretty much fully remote. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that number goes. But then the most common thing after that is 2 days. We all know it's Monday and Friday because there's no one in the car parks and there's no one driving to work and everyone's extending their weekend. And then 3 is the next one, and then 4 is the sort of lowest one. I'm really looking forward to keeping an eye on this stat and where that's going to be in the next report, because I do feel we're going to see a lot more people going down to 2. I think I expect to see that 2 figure grow a lot. Salary sacrificing, well, it's still happening. I think it should do. It's a great benefit, doesn't cost anyone anything. 50% of companies, I think everyone should be doing that, but 50% of companies are offering that. Wellness benefits, I like some of these. My favorite one, coffee machine. Really? Everyone's got a coffee machine. It's called kettle. But anyway, coffee machine, 84%. You would expect that. That's the highest benefit. Followed by free snacks. Yeah, that's pretty common these days. And then this one I was really surprised at, because it's not always that easy to do. 54% of companies are pet friendly. So I'm assuming we're talking dogs here. You know, we get many people bringing in cats, fish, turtles, things like that. But 54%, that does surprise me, because I see it in maybe smaller companies that have offices that might be, you know, their own building and things like that. But it's hard. I would have thought it'd be hard to put into larger companies. Followed by games room. No one ever in the games room. I don't know if you've ever seen anyone in a games room. I have not. Meals in the office, 42%. Yeah. On-site gym, 12%. Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's something that's there or not. And then this is great, and I'm really excited to see this. And we actually featured a company called, I forget what they were called now, but we'll put it in the chat afterwards. But it's all around volunteering. We featured them on Balance to Grind the other day. Companies that offer a volunteering program, 40%. I think that is amazing. 40% of companies are offering that. 60% don't, obviously. We didn't need to break that down for you, but I think that's great that people are doing that. I think the benefits of volunteering for employees and the people on the other end are just enormous. I think that's a stat we're going to see grow this year too.